Hey, what's going on, Multifamily Insights listeners? Listen, if you've ever been interested in developing from the ground up, maybe doing some build to rent properties, this is a conversation you don't want to miss. I sit down with Nat Cloutier, and she explains how she got started in build to rent with her husband, starting with duplexes and single family homes. Now, she had a little bit of help and encouragement from her family, but we talk about how you can get someone to guide you along that path as well. If you are interested in building from the ground up instead of chasing existing properties, this is a conversation you don't want to miss. Check it out right here on Multifamily Insights. When you think you found a great deal, asking the right questions could be the difference in finding a stud or a dud. Listen, we've put together a new guide to help you out. It's called 7 Questions You Must Ask Before Investing in Apartments. Now, in this guide, you're going to learn how to uncover red flags, quickly identify underwriting risk, vet sponsors and team members, and confirm key assumptions. Now, this is a guide that's going to help you be a better investor, whether you're an active investor or you're a passive investor looking to partner with other operators. Asking better questions is the key to identifying great opportunities. So download this free guide. Go to our website, casmoncapital.com/7questions. That's the number 7 questions. And you can access this free guide today. To make it easy on you, though, we've put a link in our show notes. So you go to the show notes, you can click that link and access the guide right now. This guide's going to help you make better investment choices, asking the right questions to build your portfolio. So be sure to download it today. Hey, Nat, why don't you take a minute or two and give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Yes, sir. So first of all, thanks for having me on the show. It's looking forward to it. So I am French Canadian, as you can probably tell by the little accent.
Well, they
I
haven't heard you
invest.
talk enough yet.
Yeah, exactly. You'll see. I'm probably sometimes I'm looking for my words because I'm very French, but I get by pretty okay. So yeah, I'm based off in Canada. I do all my investing in Canada as well. But our strategy is build to rent. Okay, that's how we've been building our business for the past 11 years. And so we started basically. We kind of fell into it. My husband and I studied architecture technology in college. That's where we met. And then when we graduated from college, we were going to rent an apartment and met with the bank to figure out a budget. Turns out we could get like a high interest, low down payment loan to get a house. It's kind of like an FHA loan for you guys. And so it's got a different title in Canada. But yeah, so we ended up buying like a basement unit condo, realized, 3 months in that we hated it. We did not want to be in a condo. The condo fees were too high. The interest rate was high. The neighbors were all over the place. We wanted a garage, a yard, some privacy. And so we were talking to my parents about how we'd like to sell the place, but the market was bad. And so that's when my mom was like, you know what, I got something I could tell you. And so she sat me down and kind of got me into this family secret of building your own house for $0 down. And so that really opened up a whole thing for us. And it's basically, we based our success on that strategy. And so long story short, we built our house, $0 down. But in return, we had to put in some sweat equity. So basically what it is, that loan is that you replace your down payment with sweat equity. So you got to get in there, get dirty, do some work yourself. And we designed the house to have a basement apartment, which turned out to be house hacking later on that I found out. And so it kind of, it supplemented that income because we didn't have very big salaries. We were just starting out in life. We were 19, I think. And so, yeah, so that's what we did. We got our apartment, which led to a HELOC, which then led to that next deal and that next. And then eventually we were investing. And 11 years later, 53 units built in total, plus 4 purchased and renovated. So yeah, and now we're doing sixplexes and stuff. We've got like people working for us. The business is on automation. It's been really, really great, but a good 10 years of grinding to get here.
I love it, man. Well, congratulations on that. And definitely a lot to dig into. But you talked about your journey coming out from architecture school with your husband and wanting to get your own place. You had this condo, way too many regulations, condo fees, everything else just didn't work out. You had a great conversation with your mom. She gave you this advice on a strategy. You were able to take that. And since then, you've built 53 units from scratch with another 4 units that you have renovated and owned. And got a full team now and able to rock and roll and kind of build your portfolio. I got to ask, when you talk about that strategy from your mom, she said, hey, here's a strategy. You could come in, you can use 0 money down, and you've got to substitute that with sweat equity. But here's a great path. Was this a strategy that she had employed or others in the family have employed? Or was this just something she read about? I'm curious how your mom gathered this information, was able to pass that along to you.
Yeah, my parents built 4 houses in 4 years before they had my sister and I, so they had definitely dabbled in that, and they, it was a thing back here, especially, there's a local credit union that's known for this type of loan, and I think there are similarities of, with financial institutions in the US because I do have friends who have done something similar. I think it's called construction to permanent or something like that. So I know it's available, it's out there in the US as well, but here, yeah, it was a thing back then too. That is definitely how people, it was like a trend, I guess, in my parents' time. And so yeah, they were able to guide us through that first house. My dad helped, and because we were very nervous. It's a nerve-wracking thing when you're 19 and you're about to build your house and everybody else is still in college or university, right? I remember the first time the excavator got on site to start clearing the land, my husband threw up in the bushes. He was so nervous. So it was a big thing, but I'm glad we had that guidance for at least that first project, and then after, with the next projects, then we did it on our own because we felt confident enough to tackle it.
I love it. Listen, there's so many great insights there, right? And for our listeners, you may be thinking, oh, okay, it was great for you. You had your mom who could guide you through the process, and she had already done it 4 times. But don't miss the insight. We're all nervous when we start out. And, reach the point where your husband's throwing up in the bushes there. It's not about being nervous. It's about making the connections with someone who has done it, someone you trust who can guide you through the process. And sometimes that shows up in a family member. Sometimes that shows up as a mentor or another investor, a broker, a classmate, a friend. We don't know how it shows up, but the key is listening to this person who has the experience, who is guiding you through the process and trusting them, even though you're scared. And in your case, it's your mother. So obviously that trust was there, but you had the ability to lean on them even when you were scared, even when you looked around at your peers and said, there's no other 19-year-olds that I'm friends with who are doing something like this. I can understand how stressful that can be. I know for me starting out, we didn't do new development, but even just buying an existing 2 unit, I felt the same kind of fear because none of my friends were doing that. And I was asking myself, yo, am I crazy? Does this
Yep.
work? Am I making a mistake? How come no one I know is investing like this? No one I know is saving their money to go buy an investment property, right? They're all getting new cars and buying new clothes and taking vacations. And here we were living below our means, trying to save up money to buy a property. But I had started attending events and I was networking. And, I had these quasi mentors who I would see every month, and they would kind of give me some feedback. And that kind of kept me reinvigorated because I knew I could do it if they were doing it. But they were the only people I knew who were doing it. So it's so important to surround yourself with people who have the knowledge and expertise to do the thing you're interested in doing. Because if you don't, we all have a little voice in our head that's going to tell us, you've never done that before. Or what are you going to do? You're going to mess up. You're going to lose money. And you got to be able to shut that voice up, right? And the only way to do that is to have a bigger voice that is empowering, that's supportive, and that's guiding you through that process. So it may not be your mom, but find that person who can help guide you through the process. Love that for you and the story you shared. And you also talked about the first one, you leaned on your parents to help guide you through that process. But after that, you all took more of that leadership and ownership position. What was it like making that transition after you got through kind of the rough patches of that first deal?
Yeah, I remember we still had a little bit of fear because it's still now is like, okay, yeah, we're doing it again, but now we're on our own, right? So there was still definitely some fear. Plus, we were working full-time jobs, we were like 40 hours a week each. And so we were doing this on nights and weekends. It was definitely a bigger hassle and a bigger a stress because I remember when we were building our first house, my husband was working for my dad at the time. And so it was a lot easier for him to come and pop on site and do some things and take some time off. And so now that we were working in actual, demanding jobs, it was a little bit trickier. But you just kind of once you're in it, you don't have a choice. You have to plow through. And so my husband is very good. He's got he's got good skills in development and working with his hands, but he only learned that while doing the first house and by being guided by our parents and stuff. So it's still something we were working on building our skills, and it was scary, but like I said, when you're in the trenches, you don't have a choice. And just to kind of piggyback on what you said earlier, where, you have to find someone that can guide you through it. I know we were lucky that we had my parents to guide us through it, but I'm looking at one of our employees is doing the same thing. He found me through a podcast actually, and he found me on social media and sent me a message, and he said, "Hey, if ever you guys are looking to hire someone, I'd love to come work for you." And it was just great timing because we had just talked about how we needed to bring someone in. And so we brought him in, and he learned from us he's been working with us for 4 years now, and he learned from us. And now he just closed out his first lot to build his own house and do a house hack and repeat the same thing we did. But he reached out and he has that guidance. And so there's always a way to go and get that guidance, even if it's not from a family member, to go work for someone, or even call a contractor and say, "Hey, listen, are you willing to guide me through this project if I pay you like an hourly rate or something? And just for your time, if I call you up and I have questions, or if you come and do a site visit and help me through something, would you be able to mentor me in that way?" There's like a ton of different ways to do that. So I don't want people to think that, oh, we were lucky, we had that break. There's a way. There's a way to find it.
Well, and there's another thing too is, two things. One, find that who, right? There's that great book, Who Not How, and it's spot on. Figure out the who. Who can help you build your real estate dreams, right? Whether it's one of us, whether it's someone else, find that who and reach out. You got to take action. And that's the second part. This whole thing originated when you came to your mom talking about the challenges that you faced when you bought the condo. I don't know if this came up previous to that, right? Or prior to that, but it was in that moment when this discussion happened where she told you, hey, there's a strategy that you can look into. And that's the big thing too, is we got to ask, we got to be willing to take action. We have to humble ourselves sometimes. We have to put ourselves out there. And a lot of times people aren't willing to do that. They're not
Mhm.
ready. They're whatever, right? They make up whatever reason or story they have in their head. And the truth is, you're never going to be ready. Nothing's
Mhm.
ever going to be perfect. You're never going to have all the money you need just sitting in the account with no other expectations or obligations. Like it's
That's like
always
planning to
something.
have a baby. You'll never be
Yeah,
ready to
you're
have a
never
baby. You
ready.
just
You're
got to
never
do it.
ready. I mean, you were what? You were 19. You were in school. You know what I mean? Like I don't know anybody who says, yeah, that's the perfect scenario to start building houses, right? Like,
Exactly.
so that's life, man. You're never ready. So there's never a better time than right now. So just figure it out, right? Just figure out the who. You can learn through the process. There's certainly money and lenders around that can help make this easier, but you have to take that first step. So I appreciate you sharing that. You started this 11 years ago. So we know over the last, say, 4 or 5 years, build to rent has become extremely popular, especially in the apartment space. When you launched initially, I know you were looking for your own home. Did you set out with the intention of building for rent purposes, or were you expecting to build and sell?
No, we always had the intention to build for rent because I think, and I don't know if I really realized that in the moment, but a couple of years after I did realize it. I have a history of a family that did building development. When I was, well, before I was even born, like my grandfather had dabbled in development, well, dabbled actually. He did a lot of it in his life, but he bankrupted in the 80s when the interest rates went really high because of the oil crisis. And so, and there was a lot of builders in the area that had bankrupted during that time. But the reason why is because they were all building to sell. They weren't retaining any equity, right? And so, yeah, we just sort of, I think with the first duplex, and this is a long time ago, so I'm trying to remember that thought process, but with the first duplex we did that wasn't ours, I think it was more of a retirement plan for us because we weren't working in jobs that offered a retirement plans or any kind of benefits. And so we just figured, well, let's build a duplex. It'll be a retirement fund for later. Plus, actually, I should mention we had kept that condo as a rental as well because the market was bad. It wasn't selling. And so we had tenants in, and we were actually cash flowing negatively with that one at $300 a month. And I think for us, it was just a very simple way of thinking, but it was like, if we can make some cash flow on this duplex, it'll supplement the income we're losing on that condo. And if ever like that condo stops paying, well, then they're going to cover it. Or if they stop paying the condo, anyways, it was like it was a simple beginner's way of thinking. But that's what led us to do that first. And then after that, The next one, it was a single family home where it was like, well, we wanted to sell it, but in Canada or in Ontario, you have to have a carry-on warranty program. You have to be like an accredited builder to build and sell. The only way to get around to building something is if you're keeping it, you're building it for yourself and you're keeping it as a rental. So that was another thing. We're like, okay, well then maybe we'll keep it for 5 years and sell it after. Which is what we did because it was a single family home. There was no cash flow in it. But eventually, after two or three, we realized that we were actually kind of slow learners when you think about it. It took us like two or three properties. And there were no podcasts back then. We didn't think of going to read books on the subject, right? We were young. We were just winging it. We just thought we'd make like a retirement plan with that one, a quick buck with that one. And then turns out we're like, you know what? This is investing. This is a thing. My husband was able to quit his job on the third build, I think, and to work full time. And then we realized, what, if we keep going, we can actually supplement our income and being able to work full time in the business for both of us. So it was a very slow process.
Yeah, but I love it, right? Because you broke it down in a very simple and easy to understand manner. And I think sometimes we can get way too caught up in, cap rates and
Yeah.
cash on cash return and all these other metrics. Sometimes, especially when you're starting out, man, you just got to keep it easy. Like, what's your plan? And I know for me, that's exactly what we did as well, right? We were renters and we bought a duplex as our first property. We house hacked it, which was not the term people used back then,
Yeah.
but we house hacked it. And we lived upstairs. We rented the first floor. But my math was super easy. It was like, well, right now we pay $1,500 in rent. If I can pay less than that, we're on the plus side. And
Yeah.
quite frankly, if we're building equity, even better. Because for $1,500 in rent, that's $18,000 a year out of the window, right? No
Yeah.
equity, no nothing. $18,000 just gone every year. But I was like, all right, but if we can cut that down and I own the property, so that's maybe my mortgage payment, but that's equity I'm building, then it's almost like 2x what I'm paying. And we ended up buying that property. I think the first floor paid us like $1,400 rent or something like that. And then we moved upstairs and our mortgage ended up being like 1,900 with taxes, insurance and everything like that. So it was like $500 we had to pay out of pocket.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, not only that, but now I'm building equity.
Yeah.
I'm only paying $500 out of pocket. This is like 3x return all the way around. And we were able to create some equity, right? But we didn't do a whole lot of calculations, right? The math was real simple. It was like, how much are
Exactly.
they paying rent? How much am I going to have to pay left over? Okay, great. Now,
Yeah.
again, you get more advanced and you realize, I probably should have more reserves. I should have planned for this. I should have planned for that. But starting out, sometimes you just got to keep it simple so you can get the
Yeah.
traction that you need to get momentum building.
Yeah, you got to try to avoid overanalyzing sometimes and
Yeah.
making sure, like, obviously, you have to do the risk calculation. But if the basic math works out, and obviously, I can't say that because you do have to do a risk calculation and make sure that you're not taking unnecessary risks. But yes, sometimes it is kind of easier and better to go in blindly and hope for the best.
Yeah, and learn. I mean, obviously, you want to
Yeah.
learn from, experiences that you've had, experiences I've had, other investors. I mean, the only thing I would have done differently is put more money aside for reserves because stuff
Mhm.
breaks and stuff happens. That's just the life of owning property. But other than that, the strategy worked out. And then as we got more comfortable there, we were able to do more of an analysis on future deals. So it made it a lot easier for us. Let's go back to the BTR space, right? Because it's shifted a lot over the years, right? So you started off really because some of the way the laws and the ordinances are set up for you in Canada, they kind of mandated or made it almost where that was the only path to go or kind of the most ideal path for you to go. But we know in many different markets, there's just been more and more demand from renters for build to rent homes, right? These are houses that are newer, they're designed for rent, not necessarily designed to sell to a retail homeowner. What have you seen on in your market over the last decade or so as far as the change in both resident demand as well as investor demand?
So a lot changed in 10 years. Like I saw a lot of things go up and down. COVID was a huge aspect of that. But I think that just like here in Ontario, the market is very expensive. So it's very hard to find, an existing property that has enough equity in that you can buy existing and then renovate it and still have enough cash flow left in the deal. It's very hard. And if there is a good deal on MLS or whatever, it gets snatched up right away by an investor. So it's a very competitive market. And I think a lot of places are like that, especially nowadays. Maybe 10 years ago, it was a little easier. And then when COVID happened, well, that was like just out of control. And so for us, building was kind of like creating a loophole where we don't have to be shopping for these non-existing deals. And also, the way that we do the BTR, the build to rent, is it's kind of like the BRRRR 2.0, I call it. So, the traditional BRRRR of buying and existing, renovating and refinancing, it's the same thing, except there's one less R in it. So I call it the build, rent, refinance, and repeat. So basically, if you build right, you can refinance and pull out all of the money you would have put in and then reinvest it in the next property. And so you've got an infinite ROI, and you're just keeping that loop going, right? So and here it's very hard to do that with existing properties because like I said, the initial price tag is already very high. And so the couple of times that we did do renovations on existing properties, we had to leave money in the deal until we eventually sold them. Then that's where we recouped all of our cash, right? And then when COVID happened, it was the price on lumber, everything went up crazy. And so we had to kind of reshift our business during that time. And then the interest rates rose after that. So again, you're constantly reshifting, but never did a project or a deal fail. It's not like flipping where I find that there's a little bit more risk involved when the market turns like that. Or for us, it always worked. The only time, like right now, we're going to be taking a step back and we're going to be taking a break mostly for ourselves because we need a mental break from everything, but also because there's a lot of new legislation that just went by in the last couple of years to try and incentivize affordable housing. And so what's happening right now here is that the provincial government is trying to incentivize affordable housing by doing all these things to eliminate red tape for builders. But then municipalities are getting involved and they're cutting that and saying, no, 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 because then we're losing money. And so they're trying to put the red tape back on and increase the fees. And so there's like this tension going on. And so we just needed to take a step back because we had a big year of fighting the municipality on these new legislations. And we're going to see where things head basically with hopefully interest rates are going to keep going up, going down, and the development fees can calm down a little bit and the red tape can be removed. But yeah, a lot has happened. I said a lot of things right now, but
Yeah, but you hit on it, right? So I mean, over the last 10 years, a lot of change. Obviously, when you got started, the market was in a different place. COVID changed a lot. Building materials went up in price. A lot of regulatory shifts and changes with the municipalities, and that's part of it. But the thing you hinted at was when it comes to building, you kind of have more control in
yeah,
general of the timing, the prices, the exit, all those factors, versus when you're flipping, you kind of have smaller margins, right? You don't have as much room for error, and the timeline is more compressed as well. So you mentioned that, hey, with the bill for rent, yes, there have been challenges and things like that, but not to the point where it derailed the project. As a person who flipped homes, I can tell you, we did, full gut rehab jobs, and I did not have flipping experience. So I really relied 100% on the contractor who was a partner. So he was doing this. He had done multiple flip projects. He was a developer, and it just went awry. It just went sideways after a few months. It just went left. And he did this to all of his partners. I mean, I picked him, so I take full ownership of that. But that was a challenge that we faced. And as I reflect back on that, a lot of it had to do with kind of the buy side of it, right? We bought it kind of really I won't say at a premium, but we bought it what it was worth at that time. We really didn't get a big enough discount. We didn't have enough margins or gaps put into the profitability. And on the build side, I know a lot of investors are always intrigued by building, but they just don't know what they don't know, right? We could
yeah.
go into it with some assumptions, but who knows if the city's going to approve certain things or, where the rent's going to be or whatever the case may be there. When you are doing this yourself, talking to other investors who are looking to get into the built for rent space, what advice would you give them on getting started? What are some key things they have to pay attention to?
Yeah, there's definitely ways that you have to mitigate before jumping into a project, and you have to analyze a potential land deal. And actually, for those listening, I just launched a book, and there's a whole chapter on analyzing a potential land deal. So there's a lot in that chapter. But very quickly, you have to make sure that you first of all the first things we'll look at is what services are available at the lot. So is there municipal water and sewer? If there's no municipal water, it's a deal breaker for us. We won't buy that property because you can't really do a multifamily on a well. If there's no municipal sewer, it's not a deal breaker necessarily if it's still in a great location and if it's still going to rent well. So we have done like half of our portfolio is made up with septic fields, but it rents well, is in a great location. It's just another moving part that that requires maintenance and stuff throughout the years. So it sucks, but I mean, usually you get the price of the lot a little lower than you were in an urban area. And then the other thing that you have to check if the services are there is the zoning. Obviously, you need to make sure that it's zoned for what you want to do. Yes, you can apply for zoning changes, but you're never guaranteed that it's actually going to go through. So that's why I always say, so first check your zoning, and then if zoning seems to work, then have a pre-consultation with the city. And I have a checklist in my book too. And I have like a toolkit that you can download. And that checklist is part of it, where you sit down with the city and you ask all these questions. And you want to make sure that the city knows exactly what you intend to build. You're not hiding anything, right? You're not like trying to hide things from the city. You're having an open conversation and knowing what would entail getting a permit approved for this type of project. Do you have to do a minor variance? Do you, for even just parking requirements and stuff, do you have to do a zoning change? And if you do have to do a zoning change, would they support the project along with you, or do they think that it's not going to get approved because of the here it's like the provincial plan? If it's not in line with the provincial plan, then they're not going to approve it. So you need to make sure that those things kind of check off the list, and then you need to make sure that the utility companies pass at that property too. So do you have your electricity, your water, your internet? Internet, we kind of assume it's everywhere, but it's really not. At one of our projects, the internet, we thought it was at the street because we saw it, but then when we called the company there, and we were already building, like we were framed, they're like, yeah, it stops just before your driveway, so to bring it into your property is going to be $30,000. We were like, what? And so thank God for that satellite dish with Tesla guy, what's his name? Elon Musk there.
Yeah.
Starlink, thank you. So we did the Starlink on the roof, and we wired the building appropriately. And then we can do multiple phases on that lot. So eventually, when we do phase 2 and 3, then we'll bring in the whole infrastructure for that. But it's not something that we had planned for. So I tell people, make sure that that's there. Make sure there's no easement on the property too. I've seen a local builder that built his first property once, and there was a high voltage wiring running across the property, and he had already poured his foundation, and turns out he couldn't build within 15 feet of that high voltage. So he had to, rip the foundation wall out, shrink the building, reorder all his trusses. So there are definitely risks with building. This is not a risk-free strategy, but you have to make sure that if you can go through that checklist and you do your due diligence properly in the beginning, you do eliminate most of that risk. Like a soil test too is always a good thing to have. You want to make sure you have good soil and you're not stuck doing a super costly foundation just to support your structure. So those are all things to look for. And then if those things check out, and if the location works well, then I say talk to a local property manager if you don't know what the income would be, like what the rent prices are, and then do your basic math. And if all that checks out, and if you can get financing, a pre-approval, then you should be solid to go on your offer.
I'm loving that. You just gave a masterclass of information to check out before you jump headfirst into a new development project. But just to recap a little bit of that, you mentioned, first of all, checking with utilities, right? For municipal water and sewer, maybe different based on the city that you're in, but is it city owned? Is it based on the individual? I know for folks who are in mobile homes, this is a huge thing too, but
Yeah.
you got to understand, city supplying water, sewer, or are you responsible for that? What is zoning? You want to make sure you understand the zoning before you tackle a project. Yes, you can get it changed, but way easier if it's already zoned for what you want to do.
And
You mentioned
plus,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I just want to jump in. Plus, it's not just a question of being easier to buy. You might, if you're trying to get financing on the land, if it's not zoned for your intended project, your financing might not go through. So we've had that happen before too. We were buying a general, it was zoned as general commercial, and we were trying to build obviously rental apartments. And so the bank was like, well, we're not going to finance this lot because it's not zoned already in what you're intending to do. So we had to buy it out cash and then change the zoning, and then eventually get financing once the construction had started. So that's just something to look out for.
That's a great point. Great watch out there. You also talk about a pre-consultation with the city. Make sure that you're clear on what your plans are. You're not hiding stuff. Be transparent. Let them know what your plans are, and get some buy-in from them. You also talk about the other utilities, including internet. Make sure you understand what the plans are there. You also talked about the easement. Make sure you understand what can you and can't you do. I've got a buddy of mine who is looking to build right now. He first came to me. It was a 64 unit townhome community he was building. The next time I talked to him, he had talked to the city. It was down to 44 unit townhome community. The last time I talked to him, it was down to 36, right? And this is all because of the easements. It's all because of how much roadway access he needed and all these different factors. So it keeps shrinking. So obviously a 36 unit project is way different than a 60 plus unit project. And
Yeah.
the last thing you mentioned was the environmental, right? Understanding the soil, understanding, just the grounds. Clearly you may need environmental tests, just to
Mhm.
understand what was there before. And these are all important things you need to know before you break ground for sure.
Yeah.
Great stuff there. And I'll add too, the United States, there's a couple other things that investors should think about. One, there's a lot of private public partnership opportunities, whether it be through opportunity zones or grants or other things like that. So you'll certainly want to understand any of those initiatives. You talked a lot about affordable housing. That is certainly a big sticking point in the United States as well. So you'll want to understand any legislation there, particularly if you're building over a certain amount of units. And as you said, I mean, that local legislation, these local officials, they have big skin in the game as far as
Mhm.
being stakeholders, and they want to show the value that they're adding to their communities. And new construction development is one of the best ways that they can flex, either blocking projects or approving projects. So you certainly want to understand what they're looking for and get that initial buy-in before you get too far in the process. Great stuff there. One of the things I know you're focused on as well, or that you talk about, is really the ADU advantage. For
Mhm.
those who are not familiar, talk about what ADUs are and how you see it as an advantage.
Yeah, ADUs are additional dwelling units. So accessory units is like a in-house apartments. I think there's a few different terms for it. But and lately that's the legislation I was talking about earlier that came out here in Ontario in 2023. It's called a Bill 23. And really what that legislation did is that they changed the zoning basically where if you are allowed to do an ADU and have it like an apartment in your house, before. Now you're allowed to have a second ADU. So there's a big trend here in Ottawa where people were doing basement apartments already. They already had that maybe in their house, and now with that new bill, they were adding tiny homes in the yard and helping like people like refugees and stuff like that. And so there was a big trend for that. The way we used it, it was great. Is that we basically so we had a for those looking on YouTube, I have like some pictures of the houses in the back. And this property here used to be a duplex. And so we had built this in 2018. And when that bill came out, my husband was building a fourplex in front. And he's like, how can we use this to our advantage? And by the way, for those who don't know, in Canada, we have to renew our interest rates every like 3 to 5 years. And this property, because it was built in 2018, it was due to renew in 2023 when the interest rates spiked to the craziest it had ever been. And so we are like, great, we're going to go from like barely cash flowing because it was just a duplex to not cash flowing at all and actually losing money on this property. But it was in a great location. We didn't want to sell it. And so my husband's like, I wonder if we can take that ADU bill, remove the roof off of this project, set it on the front lawn, build up a third unit, have that second ADU, and then put the roof back on. So that's exactly what we did. And I have a video of it on Instagram. It's one of our coolest projects. I still love that. And so we were able to revamp that property, and even like we went from a 3% interest rate, we had to renew, and I think it was like just shy of 6%. So we doubled the interest rate. Yet we had a turnover too in the basement, which helped bring the rent price up. But now we're cash flowing like I think is $1,300 a month or something like that. So it really became one of our gem properties. And so the other advantage of an ADU, and again, this is happening across. It's not just in Ontario. There's new legislation like this. I've heard there's one in Minnesota and California. There's a few similar ones, but basically the way we're using it is Before, when we could do a fourplex, we would use the zoning where it would be like a side to side duplex or a semi detached, here it's called. And then we would add ADUs in the basement, creating a 4 unit. Now, with this new bill, we're adding a second ADU on the second floor, making it a sixplex. So, why that's a big advantage for us is because here development charges are extremely expensive. And if you were to pay development charges on 6 units, you'd be looking at like $160,000 permit, if not more. And now we were only paying it on the 2 main dwelling units, because the other four, when they count as ADUs, you're not paying development charges on them. And so we slashed. And plus, if you had an existing house where it's an infill project and you demolish the house and would rebuild, you'd get a credit on one of your DCs. And so we would only pay like $60,000 for the permit. So we were saving $100K right off the bat by doing it this way. And so that was a big advantage. And so it's not something that we used to be able to do in the past 10 years. And it's only been 2 years that we've been able to do that. And so we've done 2 sixplexes in the last 2 years with that, and like 3 triplexes with that new bill.
Nat, I appreciate that. I mean, ADUs are certainly growing in the States as well. You mentioned California. I'm not as familiar with Minneapolis, but I definitely know in Chicago, it's a big thing. When I was in Chicago, a lot of people had kind of those finished basements, and they were not legal units. And over the last few years, they've actually changed the law to make those acceptable, as well as those kind of garage units. So that's something we see as growing. And I think it's just another tool in the toolbox, right? Where you've got to figure out strategies of optimizing a property. A lot of times investors, we look at an asset, we might grab the rent roll, we might look at the T12, the income statement, and try to figure out what we think a property is worth. The best investors are creative. They're going to try to figure out what a property could do, what could it be. And obviously developers, they have that natural inclination to envision something bigger and better. But for most investors who are, buy and hold rental owners, they don't necessarily think like that. And I think that's one takeaway for us is really just being a bit more creative, not necessarily saying overpay for existing assets, but just try to use your imagination of what could be. How else can you create value at an asset? Is it adding an ADU? Is it understanding kind of the laws or the opportunities? Maybe there's government grants or programs, but really just trying to understand how can you extract more value out of the property. That's going to enable you to thrive as an investor. For folks who want to learn more, first of all, you mentioned the book. What's the name of the book?
It's called The Build to Rent Strategy, a guide to a successful rental property construction.
I love it. All right. So we'll make sure we link to that. And your website is thenewbuiltcouple.com. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. But check her out. Check out the team over there on Instagram as well. I definitely want to check out that video. I think it's great content and great information to share. Right now, we're going to transition to our round of insights. Are you ready?
Yep, let's do it.
They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmoncapital.com and click on the mastermind button today. All right, Nat, give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Well, burning out. We burnt out and we realized, okay, we have to delegate. And so we hired a team, and now we're reaping the benefits of having a team. And we realized we should have done this before, because a good business leader doesn't get too involved in the details and emotionally involved. And, yes, you got to grind and stuff, but there's a breaking point, and you have to notice that in yourself and take a step back, and you have to prepare your business in advance for that, so that your business can keep thriving without you there every day. So that was a failure, yet it turned into a success. Yeah, for sure.
Give me a piece of technology, so a mobile app or resource that you recommend for our listeners.
We use Buildium for tenant management software, and we think, and actually we're in Canada, so we can't even use like a part of the features. But for those in the US, it's been really great to be able to track, maintenance requests, rent income, and all that. I recommend it. And any kind of, doesn't have to be Buildium, just any kind of tenant management software. Even if you just have a couple of units, I think it's the best way to create systems and operations and kind of detach yourself from the day-to-day with tenants on your phones,
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
And well, that's my book, Built to Rent Strategy. If I go off another book, I would say, and this is a Canadian title, but it works everywhere. And I call it. Well, I don't call it. The title is the Secrets to the Canadian Real Estate Cycle by Don Campbell. And even if you're in the U.S., it applies because real estate markets are the same throughout. And it just talks about the different cycles and how to recognize them and how to recognize which cycle you're in and how to prepare for the next.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Working out. I have to, if it's not just like a quick workout, I need to go for a run or a walk. I need that time to move.
Give me your number one insight for building to rent.
Number one insight. Well, just honestly would be to do your due diligence well and make sure, because it's not a risk-free strategy. You just have to make sure that you calculate the risk before jumping in.
All right. And I know you are near Ottawa. Give us your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Oh, God. I actually don't even know. I never go to Ottawa.
Wherever you're at.
Yeah, I'm going to recommend instead Mont-Tremblant because I have a cottage there and we're always there every weekend. And so I would go to Mont-Tremblant, either in the pedestrian village, the touristic village. We like SoCal, or there's a couple places there, or even in Saint-Jovite, which is the city just before Mont-Tremblant. There's a lot of great places to go there. And I don't even know if I can name one because every place to eat there is just freaking good.
Well, there you go. Sounds like some great options there. Well, Nat, I appreciate your time today. A couple takeaways for me. First and foremost, just understanding there's great people around you. You just have to be willing to ask for help. And your mom was able to do that for you, get you that guidance you needed to get that first deal done. But trust in the process, taking action, huge insight for all of our listeners there. On top of that, just learning why build to rent is so attractive. There's a lot of opportunities there. You have more control over the process, and there's more upside potential as well. And then last, just doing your due diligence, making sure you understand the process and key things to pay attention to, from utilities to the municipality, checking in with the city. Lots more involvement up front, but obviously it's worth it if you can get those deals approved. And lastly here, just really understanding what it takes to be successful, looking at ADUs and being creative with your business plan, looking at those projects and properties with a creative lens. That's going to help to unlock the profit potential. Again, if you guys want to connect with Nat and her team, go to thenewbuildcouple.com and check out her book. Definitely want to make sure you check that out. Nat, great having you on the show today. We look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a great one. Take care.
Thank you so much.